So truly, what did make Queen Elizabeth, as we now all know her, of course, the late Queen Mother, abandon this royal premiere in the very heart of London? The reasons may shock you. Oh, yes. Morning, chums. Nice to see you. Thank you so much for your time today. Royal history, is just fascinating when you look back because really, it's kind of hard to explain just how powerful the royals were. They still are now, but in a totally different way. And I'm sure you've read, like me, many different things about how William wants to adjust the monarchy in the future. And of course, every generation, every new monarch wants to change things up. That's the whole point. When you think about it, Queen Elizabeth was very young and had many years to develop her role as, of course, a queen. Very, very young when you think about it, in her 20s, but fortunate, as I've mentioned before, to have the likes of the brilliant British Prime Minister Winston Churchill to guide her, but as she apparently said, but not pushy, just offering advice as and when and if I required it. Of course, when you look back at how royal events were taking shape, it's a lot harder, because of course there were certain protocols. And you have to imagine that now, as we saw recently, Prince William, somebody jumping out of the side of the bushes and rushing up to get a selfie and a hug. Well, that would never have happened way back, for instance, in the 1940s. People were more deferential, more respectful, and really possibly more in awe. None more so than when there was a British royal film premiere. And one of the biggest films of 1945, November, was the royal premiere of this little epic. I say little because it's become a phenomenon around the world. Brief Encounter, written by the incomparable Sir Noel Coward. Now, I've been lucky enough to meet members of the family and the daughter of Celia Johnson, and she told me some wonderful stories about her mother. Celia Johnson, to me, was one of those brilliant and very much at times underrated and forgotten actresses because she wasn't a starry-eyed about that. She liked the job, she did it, and that was it. That was the thing. According to her daughter, she said, no, she just enjoyed the work, didn't necessarily want the superstar stuff attached. Brief Encounter, as we all know, is just a mega film, a juggernaut, which started out in Birmingham Repertory Theatre, and at that point didn't have a film deal, but once somebody saw the story and the reception that it received on stage, they thought, wow, a film's in the offing. And what a brilliant cast, Trevor Howard, Celia Johnson, everybody took wonderful roles. And I think it's a story of any time. People say, it's, set in the war, which it is, of course, at that particular point. Milford Halen, every week, if you remember, taking a library book back. Incredible. Just a totally different world. But what a world that we liked in many respects. The nosy person literally in the waiting room cafe, listening into all the conversations. Now, an early release of the film was sent over to Buckingham Palace, and the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth, sat down and watched it and was in floods of tears. I mean, literally floods of tears, according to the papers. And apparently the King came and said, what's wrong? And so she said, oh, I've just watched this film, and oh goodness, And so he then sat and watched it, and apparently, stiff upper lip, he found it a little misty-eyed, but certainly didn't burst into the tears that Queen Elizabeth did. But the problem was that going up to the movie premiere in November, they'd been personally invited. And remember, the Queen Mother was an excellent and good friend of Noel Coward. So much so, many years later, she unveiled a bust of his at the Theatre Royal, Drury Lane. That's how close they were. And he often got invited for dinners and lunches, of course, to Clarence House and stuff like that, because he was such good company. Apparently very spicy, didn't really hold back, and said exactly what he thought. Ideal company for the Queen Mother, right? And it all was set. And, fair enough, yes, it was going to be in London, in Leicester Square, and the Queen Mother would attend. Then this happened. A few weeks later, it was suggested by His Majesty the King that she might want to watch the film again to just get rid of any tears, right? And you may think, what do you mean, rid of any tears? Well, you see, they decided that if she went to see the film and she became emotional again, it could be read one or the other way. It was terrible and she couldn't wait to get out, or she was so emotional she had to leave the cinema. And remember, royals don't cry in public. We very rarely saw the Queen crying, right? Only say Royal Yacht Britannia, or indeed Remembrance Sunday, things that truly moved her. Now, the Queen Mother thought about this and she said apparently to the King, you know, I don't know. I just don't know. It's so emotional. I don't know if I can keep my emotions in check. So very tentatively, they decided that the Duchess of Kent would represent her, literally in aid of the Wrens, which was their charitable association for the movie. And this was all seen back then as something of as a snub, and literally the media painted it up as, you know, the Queen Mum, you know, basically Queen Elizabeth at the time, sorry, snubs her friend Sir Noel Coward. Very few knew the inside track as to why she couldn't attend, because as she said to him, and there are our letters of this, it's a brilliant film and it doesn't matter how many times I watch it, and I know the ending, Noel, but it just brings out all the emotion in me. And he totally understood. He said, no, I get it. And to say that you are that moved by it really pleases me. But as she said, she couldn't leave the Theatre Royal, you know, the sort of Leicester Square Theatre, with a mascara running down her face. And how could she repair it literally at the end if everybody got up and gave her an applause? So it was best decided that the Duchess of Kent, who wasn't as emotional about the movie, would represent her. Of course, for years, that was billed as a feud. Now you know it was all about the Queen, well, being rather sentimental over a wonderful story written by Sir Noel Coward, simply called Brief Encounter. Neil Sean, Kensington, London.